The October morning air in Cedar Grove, Illinois carried the crisp promise of autumn as students filed into Lincoln High School's auditorium. The old building's wooden floors creaked under hundreds of footsteps, and the familiar scent of floor wax mixed with teenage cologne filled the space. Principal Margaret Harrison stood at the podium, her steel-gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, her expression stern as she surveyed the restless crowd of teenagers. Settle down, Principal Harrison's voice boomed through the microphone, causing feedback that made several students wince. The morning assembly was a weekly tradition at Lincoln High, though most students considered it more of a punishment than an opportunity for inspiration. In the third row, 17-year-old Emma Rodriguez carefully felt for the edge of her seat before sitting down. Her guide dog, Apollo, a golden retriever with intelligent brown eyes, settled beside her feet with practiced ease. Emma had been navigating Lincoln High's halls for 3 years now, but she still felt the familiar flutter of anxiety that came with large gatherings where she couldn't see the reactions of those around her. Today, we're going to discuss responsibility and accountability, Principal Harrison began, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had delivered this speech countless times before. Too often, I see students in these halls who expect special treatment, who think the world owes them something simply because they face challenges. Emma shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She recognized the tone. It was the same one Principal Harrison had used during their uncomfortable meeting last month when Emma had requested permission to use her laptop with screen-reading software during the state-mandated tests. Some of you seem to think that having difficulties gives you the right to bend the rules, the principal continued, her eyes scanning the crowd before landing on Emma's section. That you deserve accommodations that other students don't get. That somehow, your challenges make you special. The auditorium had grown uncomfortably quiet. Emma could hear the whispers starting around her, feel the eyes turning in her direction. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment as she realized where this was heading. Miss Rodriguez, Principal Harrison's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Would you stand up, please? Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. Apollo sensed her distress and pressed closer to her legs, offering the comfort he'd been trained to provide. With trembling hands, Emma pushed herself to her feet, feeling exposed and vulnerable in front of her entire school. Miss Rodriguez here has been requesting special accommodations for various school activities, Principal Harrison announced, her voice carrying clearly through the now silent auditorium. Extra time on tests, permission to use electronic devices, special seating arrangements. She seems to believe that her condition entitles her to treatment that puts her ahead of other students. Emma felt tears welling up behind her dark sunglasses. The silence in the auditorium was deafening, broken only by the soft panting of Apollo beside her and the distant hum of the heating system. She could sense the hundreds of pairs of eyes on her, could almost feel the mixture of pity and discomfort radiating from her classmates. What Miss Rodriguez fails to understand, the principal continued relentlessly, is that in the real world, there are no special accommodations. Employers won't care about your limitations. College professors won't give you extra help just because you think you deserve it. Life is not going to bend over backward to make things easier for you. Emma's best friend, Marcus Chen, who was sitting 2 seats away, started to rise from his chair. Principal Harrison, this isn't, he began, but the principal's sharp look silenced him immediately. Mr. Chen, you will remain seated unless you'd like to join Miss Rodriguez in detention, Principal Harrison snapped. This is exactly the kind of enabling behavior that doesn't help anyone. Emma stood there, feeling smaller and more humiliated with each passing second. She had worked so hard to prove herself at Lincoln High, staying after school for extra help, participating in study groups, pushing herself to excel despite the challenges her blindness presented. And now, in front of the entire school, she was being painted as someone who wanted handouts, someone who used her disability as an excuse. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires reasonable accommodations, Emma said quietly, her voice barely audible over the microphone system. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for equal access to education. Principal Harrison's expression hardened. Equal access doesn't mean making things easier for you, Miss Rodriguez. It means you have the same opportunities as everyone else. If you can't keep up without special help, then perhaps you need to reconsider whether this academic environment is right for you. The words hit Emma like physical blows. She had heard variations of this sentiment before, from teachers who didn't understand her needs, from classmates who thought she got unfair advantages, from family members who worried she was setting her sights too high. But hearing it broadcast to her entire school, delivered with such authority and conviction, was devastating. "You may sit down now," Principal Harrison said dismissively, already turning her attention to other matters. "Let this be a lesson to all of you about personal responsibility and the dangers of making excuses." Emma sank back into her seat, her legs feeling weak and unsteady. Apollo immediately pressed against her, sensing her emotional turmoil. Around her, she could hear the uncomfortable shifting of her classmates, the whispered conversations starting to bubble up as the assembly moved on to other topics. Marcus leaned over as close as he dared. "Emma, I'm so sorry," he whispered. "That was completely out of line. Everyone knows how hard you work." But Emma barely heard him. She felt hollow, humiliated, and utterly defeated. All the progress she thought she'd made, all the respect she believed she'd earned, seemed to crumble in the span of those few devastating minutes. As Principal Harrison droned on about upcoming events and policy changes, Emma sat in stunned silence, wondering if she would ever be able to face her classmates again. The woman who was supposed to advocate for all students had just publicly undermined everything Emma had worked for, reducing her to nothing more than a burden seeking handouts. The assembly finally ended with the usual dismissal announcements, and students began filing out in their typical chaotic fashion. Emma remained seated, waiting for the crowd to thin before attempting to navigate her way out. She couldn't bear the thought of more stares, more whispered comments, more pity. "Emma!" A gentle voice beside her made her turn. It was Mrs. Sarah Martinez, her AP English teacher, who had quietly approached during the exodus. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Mrs. Martinez asked, her voice filled with concern and barely contained anger at what she had just witnessed. Emma tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She managed a small shake of her head before the tears she'd been holding back finally began to fall. The rest of Monday passed in a blur of hushed conversations and awkward encounters. Emma moved through Lincoln High's familiar hallways with Apollo by her side, but everything felt different now. The casual greetings from classmates seemed forced, the usual chatter in her AP classes felt muted, and even the teachers appeared uncomfortable when addressing her directly. By lunchtime, Emma had retreated to the library, seeking refuge in the quiet corner where she usually studied. The smell of old books and the soft hum of fluorescent lights provided some comfort, but she couldn't shake the memory of standing exposed in front of the entire school, being used as an example of what not to be. "There you are." Marcus's voice interrupted her brooding. She heard him pull out the chair across from her, followed by the softer footsteps of someone else. "I brought reinforcements," Marcus said gently. "Sarah wanted to talk to you." Sarah Kim had been Emma's lab partner in AP Chemistry for 2 years. Unlike Marcus, who was naturally protective and outgoing, Sarah was quiet and analytical, which made her concern all the more meaningful to Emma. "What Principal Harrison did today was disgusting," Sarah said without preamble, her usually soft voice carrying an edge of anger. "Half the school is talking about it, and not in the way she probably hoped." Emma lifted her head from her arms. "What do you mean?" "I mean people are pissed," Marcus interjected. "Jake Morrison started a petition during third period demanding an apology. The junior class president is talking about bringing it up at the next school board meeting. Even some of the teachers looked uncomfortable up there." "Mrs. Peterson was furious," Sarah added. "I heard her talking to Mr. Williams after second period. She called it educational malpractice and said she was going to document everything." Mrs. Peterson was the school's special education coordinator, a fierce advocate who had helped Emma navigate the accommodation process when she first arrived at Lincoln High. Emma felt a small spark of hope knowing that at least some adults in the building were on her side. "It doesn't matter," Emma said quietly, fingering the rough texture of her textbook cover. "The damage is done. Everyone heard what she said. They're going to think I'm just looking for easy ways out." "Emma, that's crazy," Marcus said earnestly. "You have the third highest GPA in our class. You're in 4 AP courses. You volunteer at the animal shelter every weekend. You tutored half the sophomore class in algebra last year. Nobody who actually knows you thinks you're looking for handouts." "But what about the people who don't know me?" Emma asked. "The underclassmen, the new students, the parents who were visiting today? All they heard was the principal of the school saying I was asking for special treatment." The three friends sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment, the weight of the morning's events settling over them like a heavy blanket. Emma could hear other students in the library, their conversations a low murmur in the background, and she wondered if they were talking about her too. "There's something else," Sarah said hesitantly. "Something you should probably know before you hear it from someone else." Emma's stomach tightened. What? Tyler Harrison was at the assembly today. Emma's blood ran cold. Tyler Harrison, Principal Harrison's son, a sophomore who had always seemed to resent Emma's presence in advanced classes typically dominated by upperclassmen. She had tried to be friendly with him when they first met, but he had made several snide comments about her special privileges that had hurt more than she cared to admit. "He was smirking during the whole thing," Marcus said, his voice tight with disgust. "Like he was enjoying watching his mom tear you down in public." "And he's been making comments all day," Sarah added reluctantly. "Nothing directly to your face, but he's been telling people that his mom was right, that you've been gaming the system all along." Emma felt nauseated. It was bad enough to be humiliated by the principal, but knowing that her son was actively working to undermine her reputation made everything so much worse. "I want to go home," Emma whispered, feeling overwhelmed and defeated. "You can't let them win like this," Marcus said firmly. "Emma, you belong here. You've earned your place in every single class you're in. Don't let them make you feel otherwise." "But what if they're right?" Emma asked, the question that had been haunting her all morning finally escaping. "What if I am asking for too much? What if I'm just fooling myself about being able to compete with everyone else?" "Stop." Sarah's voice was sharp, cutting through Emma's self-doubt. "I've been your lab partner for 2 years. I've watched you work. You don't just compete with everyone else, you outperform most of them. The only reason you need accommodations is because the system wasn't designed with people like you in mind. That's not your fault, and it's not something to be ashamed of." "Sarah's right," Marcus added. "You know what Mrs. Martinez told me after class today? She said you write better essays than students she taught at the university level. You think that's because of accommodations? You think a computer reading text out loud somehow makes you a better writer?" Emma felt tears threatening again, but this time they weren't entirely from sadness. Her friend's unwavering support meant everything to her, especially when she was struggling to believe in herself. "I just don't know how to face everyone again," she admitted. "Every time I walk into a classroom, I'm going to wonder if they're thinking about what she said. If they're looking at me like I'm some kind of fraud." "Then we'll face them together," Marcus declared. "All 3 of us. And anyone who has a problem with that can deal with me." Despite everything, Emma found herself smiling slightly. Marcus was barely 5'6" and had never been in a fight in his life, but his fierce loyalty was one of the things she valued most about their friendship. "We should probably head to 5th period," Sarah said, glancing at her watch. "But Emma, promise me you won't make any big decisions about this while you're upset. Don't let one bitter woman's ignorance derail everything you've worked for." As they gathered their things and prepared to leave the library, Emma felt a complex mixture of emotions swirling inside her. The humiliation and hurt were still there, sharp and painful, but her friend's support had kindled a small flame of defiance as well. She had worked too hard and come too far to let Principal Harrison's cruelty define her. But as they walked toward the science wing for AP Chemistry, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. She had the uncomfortable sense that today's assembly was just the beginning of a much larger battle. The afternoon classes passed slowly, with Emma hyper-aware of every whispered conversation and sideways glance. In AP Chemistry, she threw herself into the lab work with unusual intensity, grateful for the familiar precision of measurements and reactions. Science had always been her refuge, a place where logic and evidence mattered more than assumptions and prejudices. As the final bell rang and students began filing out, Emma remained at her lab station, carefully cleaning the equipment they had used. She wasn't ready to face the chaos of the hallways just yet. "Miss Rodriguez." Mr. Williams, the chemistry teacher, approached her workstation. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Emma nodded, though her stomach tightened with anxiety. She had come to respect Mr. Williams over the past 2 years. He was fair, demanding, and had never made her feel like her blindness was a limitation in his classroom. "I wanted you to know that several faculty members have discussed this morning's assembly," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that suggested careful consideration. "What happened today was inappropriate, and it doesn't reflect the values that most of us try to uphold in this building." "Thank you," Emma said softly, not sure what else to say. "More importantly," Mr. Williams continued, "I want you to know that your work in this class speaks for itself. Your lab reports are consistently among the best I receive, your understanding of complex concepts is exceptional, and your contribution to class discussions is invaluable. None of that has anything to do with accommodations or special treatment." Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. After hours of doubt and self-recrimination, his words were like a lifeline. "Don't let anyone convince you that you don't belong here," he said firmly. "Science needs minds like yours, minds that see problems from different angles and refuse to accept limitations. The world would be a poorer place without that perspective." As Emma finally made her way to the parking lot where her mother would be waiting to pick her up, she carried Mr. Williams' words with her like armor against the doubt that threatened to consume her. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she was beginning to realize that she had more allies in this fight than she had initially thought. The question was, would it be enough? Tuesday morning arrived gray and drizzling, with the kind of persistent October rain that seemed to seep into everything. Emma sat in her mother's car in the Lincoln High parking lot, listening to the rhythmic drumming of water against the windshield and fighting the urge to ask to go home. "You don't have to do this today, Mija," her mother, Rosa Rodriguez, said gently from the driver's seat. "I could call you in sick, give you time to process everything." Emma shook her head, her hand finding Apollo's reassuring presence beside her. "No, Mom. If I don't go back now, it'll be even harder tomorrow." Rosa squeezed her daughter's hand. "I'm proud of you, Emma. What that woman did yesterday was unforgivable, but the way you're handling it shows the kind of person you really are." Emma took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I just keep thinking about what she said, about the real world not making accommodations. What if she's right? What if I'm not preparing myself for what's actually out there?" "Emma Teresa Rodriguez," her mother said firmly, using her full name in the way that always commanded attention. "You are one of the strongest, most determined people I know. You've never asked for anything you didn't earn, and you've never used your blindness as an excuse for anything. That principal doesn't know who she's dealing with." As Emma made her way through the school's front entrance, she noticed the atmosphere felt different. Instead of the usual chaotic energy of teenagers before first period, there was an undercurrent of tension, of whispered conversations that stopped when she passed by. "Emma!" Marcus appeared at her side almost immediately, slightly out of breath. "I'm glad you're here. There's been some developments." "What kind of developments?" Emma asked warily. "The good kind, I think. Mrs. Peterson has been making calls all morning, and apparently, several parents complained to the district office about yesterday's assembly. Someone recorded it on their phone and sent it to the school board." Emma felt a mix of hope and anxiety. While she was grateful for the support, the idea of that humiliating moment being preserved and shared made her stomach churn. "There's more," Marcus continued as they walked toward their lockers. "Principal Harrison has been in meetings all morning with district officials, and there's some kind of special assembly scheduled for this afternoon." "Another assembly?" Emma groaned. "I can't go through that again." "This one's different." Sarah appeared on Emma's other side, her voice carrying barely contained excitement. "It's not Principal Harrison organizing it. It's coming from the district level." As they reached Emma's locker, she noticed an unusual number of students in the hallway, their conversations creating a buzz of anticipation that was hard to ignore. Several underclassmen she barely knew nodded at her respectfully as they passed, and she heard fragments of conversations that suggested the story of yesterday's assembly had spread far beyond Lincoln High's walls. "Miss Rodriguez." A voice she didn't recognize approached from behind. Emma turned to find a woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm Dr. Janet Sullivan from the district office," the woman introduced herself. "I was wondering if I could speak with you privately for a few minutes." Emma's anxiety spiked immediately. "Am I in trouble?" "Oh, goodness no," Dr. Sullivan said quickly. "Quite the opposite, actually. I'm here about something very positive, but I'd prefer to discuss it away from the hallway chaos." Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances with Emma, who nodded slightly to let them know she was okay. She followed Dr. Sullivan and Apollo to an empty classroom, her mind racing with possibilities. Emma, I want to start by apologizing for what you experienced yesterday, Dr. Sullivan began once they were seated. What Principal Harrison did was completely inappropriate and contrary to both district policy and federal law. She will be facing disciplinary action. Emma nodded, not sure how to respond. Part of her felt vindicated, but mostly she just felt tired. But that's not why I'm here today, Dr. Sullivan continued, her voice taking on a warmer tone. I'm here because of some wonderful news that was supposed to be announced yesterday, before yesterday's unfortunate events. Emma felt her heart skip. What kind of news? Emma, you've been selected as this year's Illinois High School Student Achievement Award recipient for our region. It's an honor that recognizes not just academic excellence, but leadership, community service, and overcoming challenges to achieve success. The words hit Emma like a physical force. She sat in stunned silence, sure she had misheard. What? She finally managed. Dr. Sullivan smiled. Your teachers submitted your application without your knowledge. Your academic record is extraordinary. A 4.2 GPA while taking some of the most challenging courses offered at Lincoln High. Your volunteer work at the animal shelter, your peer tutoring program, your involvement in the debate team despite being one of only 2 underclassmen selected, it's all quite impressive. Emma felt tears starting to form behind her sunglasses. But Principal Harrison said a lot of things that were factually incorrect and professionally inappropriate, Dr. Sullivan interrupted gently. Emma, the accommodations you receive don't make your achievements any less remarkable. If anything, they highlight your determination to succeed despite additional obstacles. The award comes with a $5,000 scholarship, Dr. Sullivan continued, and recognition at the state level. But more importantly, it acknowledges what those of us in education have known for some time, that you represent the very best of what students can achieve when they refuse to let circumstances limit their potential. Emma was crying now, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of everything she had believed about her place at Lincoln High. Yesterday, she had been used as an example of what was wrong with making accommodations for students with disabilities. Today, she was being honored for her achievements. There's going to be a presentation this afternoon, Dr. Sullivan explained. Normally, we would have announced this during yesterday's assembly, but given what happened, we felt it was important to make this a separate, special event. Will Principal Harrison be there? Emma asked quietly. Dr. Sullivan's expression hardened slightly. Principal Harrison will be present, yes. This will be educational for her. As Emma made her way back to the hallway, her head spinning with this unexpected turn of events, she found Marcus and Sarah waiting anxiously by her locker. Well, Marcus demanded immediately. What was that about? Emma tried to find the words to explain, but the magnitude of what had just happened was still sinking in. I won an award, she said simply. A big one. What kind of award? Sarah pressed. The Illinois High School Student Achievement Award. For the whole region. Both of her friends stared at her in shocked silence for a moment before Marcus let out a whoop of joy that caused several nearby students to turn and stare. Emma, that's incredible! Sarah exclaimed, throwing her arms around her friend. Do you know how prestigious that is? My cousin won the district-level award 3 years ago and she still puts it on her resume. As word of Emma's award began to spread through the school, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Students who had barely acknowledged her existence before were stopping to congratulate her. Teachers who had witnessed yesterday's humiliation were making a point to express their pride in her achievement. By lunchtime, the cafeteria was buzzing with excitement about the afternoon assembly. Emma found herself surrounded by classmates eager to celebrate her success, a stark contrast to the isolation she had felt just 24 hours earlier. How does it feel to go from zero to hero overnight? Tyler Harrison's sneering voice cut through the congratulations. Emma turned toward the sound, her jaw tightening. Tyler, don't, Marcus warned, but Emma held up a hand to stop him. It feels like validation, Emma said quietly, her voice carrying clearly in the suddenly quiet section of the cafeteria. It feels like proof that hard work and determination matter more than the opinions of people who don't know what they're talking about. You still needed special help to get there, Tyler shot back, but his voice lacked the confidence it had carried the day before. Yes, I did, Emma agreed, standing up from her seat. I needed technology to convert text to speech so I could read the same books everyone else reads. I needed extra time on tests so I could use that technology effectively. I needed teachers who understood that being blind doesn't mean being less intelligent. She paused, feeling the attention of dozens of students focused on her. But none of those accommodations wrote my essays for me. None of them solved my chemistry problems or helped me understand calculus. They just gave me equal access to prove what I could do. The cafeteria had gone completely silent now. Even students from other tables had turned to listen. And apparently, Emma continued, her voice growing stronger, what I can do is represent this school and this district at the state level as an example of student achievement. So yes, Tyler, I needed help. We all need help sometimes. The difference is, I'm not ashamed to ask for it. The silence that followed was broken by a single person clapping slowly. Then another joined in, and another, until the entire cafeteria was applauding. Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but this time it was the good kind. The kind that came from being seen and recognized for who she really was. As the afternoon assembly began, Emma sat in the front row of the auditorium, flanked by Marcus and Sarah. The same space that had been the site of her humiliation just one day earlier now felt completely different. Dr. Sullivan stood at the podium where Principal Harrison had delivered her cruel speech, but the energy in the room was one of celebration rather than condemnation. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sullivan began, her voice warm and professional, we're here today to celebrate an exceptional achievement by one of Lincoln High's finest students. Emma listened as Dr. Sullivan recounted her accomplishments, her community service, her academic record, and her leadership qualities. With each word, she felt herself sitting straighter, feeling more confident in her own worth. The Illinois High School Student Achievement Award recognizes students who exemplify excellence not despite their challenges, but because of how they've chosen to meet those challenges head-on, Dr. Sullivan continued. This year's regional recipient has shown us all what's possible when determination meets opportunity, when support systems work as they should, and when a student refuses to accept limitations placed on them by others. Emma could hear Principal Harrison shifting uncomfortably in her seat on the stage behind Dr. Sullivan. The irony of the situation was not lost on anyone in the auditorium. Emma Rodriguez, Dr. Sullivan announced, would you please join me on stage? As Emma made her way to the podium, guided by Apollo and greeted by thunderous applause from her classmates, she thought about how much can change in 24 hours. Yesterday, she had stood in this same space feeling humiliated and defeated. Today, she stood as a recognized leader and achiever, an example of what students could accomplish when given the support they needed to succeed. Dr. Sullivan handed her the award, a heavy crystal plaque that she couldn't see but could feel the weight and significance of, and leaned toward the microphone. Emma, would you like to say a few words? Emma took a deep breath, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The years of proving herself, the countless hours of extra work, the frustration and determination, the support of friends and teachers who believed in her, and yes, even the painful lesson of the day before. Thank you, she began, her voice steady and clear. This award means more to me than I can express, not just because of the recognition, but because of what it represents. She paused, feeling the attention of hundreds of her peers focused on her words. Yesterday, someone suggested that asking for accommodations meant I was looking for special treatment, that I was unprepared for the real world. But the real world is full of people who understand that equality means giving everyone what they need to succeed, not giving everyone the exact same thing. She could hear the murmur of agreement from the audience, could sense the shift in energy as her words resonated. This award doesn't belong just to me. It belongs to every teacher who took the time to understand how I learn best, every friend who believed in me when I doubted myself, every family member who supported my dreams, and yes, even to those who doubted me, because they motivated me to prove them wrong. As the applause filled the auditorium once again, Emma felt a profound sense of completion. The girl who had been broken down in this very space just one day earlier had not only survived but emerged stronger, more confident, and more determined than ever. Principal Harrison approached the microphone after Emma returned to her seat, her face pale and her voice subdued. I want to congratulate Miss Rodriguez on this well-deserved recognition, she said stiffly. And I want to acknowledge that yesterday's assembly contained statements that were inappropriate and not reflective of Lincoln High's commitment to supporting all students in achieving their full potential. It wasn't quite an apology, but Emma could hear the grudging respect in the principal's voice, and she knew that this moment marked a turning point not just for her, but for how the school would treat students with disabilities going forward. As students filed out of the auditorium, chattering excitedly about the assembly and Emma's achievement, she remained seated for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what had just happened. "Ready to go conquer the world?" Marcus asked, appearing beside her with his characteristic grin. Emma stood up, Apollo falling into step beside her, and smiled. "I think I already am." The October rain had stopped while they were in the assembly, and as they walked toward the exit, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Lincoln High's hallways, casting everything in a warm, golden glow. Emma couldn't see the light, but she could feel its warmth on her face, and for the first time in days, the future felt bright and full of possibility. She had learned that sometimes the greatest victories come not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them head-on with courage, dignity, and the support of those who believe in you. And as she walked out of Lincoln High that afternoon, award in hand and friends by her side, Emma Rodriguez knew that whatever the real world had in store for her, she was more than ready to meet it.